Hurricane Dennis coverage continues right here on the Weather Channel.
Update coming up. The eye wall of Hurricane Dennis is making its...
And I'm Mike Bettis in Destin, Florida. We are getting slammed right now by Hurricane Dennis. We're going to have a live update for you straight ahead.
And we continue our storm alert coverage here as we follow Hurricane Dennis here. It is imminent that it's going to be hitting landfall soon. I'm Heather Tash.
Within the half hour, let's take you to Pensacola, Florida, where you can take a look at what these conditions look like for people in the area. Water levels on the rise, surge east of the center of circulation, somewhere in the 14 to 18 foot variety. Winds on the increase, too. They've been clocked at least 66 mile per hour gusts at Destin, Florida. That's over an hour ago. Now the center of circulation approaching the coast of Florida.
And you can see some of the areas here in the path of this. Areas like Navarre, Fort Walton Beach, Pensacola. These areas are really in severe danger coming in here as we see some of these wind gusts picking up, and they are approaching hurricane force winds.
Now we have live coverage all along the Gulf Coast. We're going to take you first, I believe, to Jim Cantori at Pensacola, Florida. Well, here they are, all of them lined up. Mike Bettis, Mike Seidel, Jim Cantori, and Jeff Morrow. And you see where they are, too, getting hammered in Gulf breeze right now. Let's start with Jim Cantori. Jim, we can see what conditions are like. How are you faring, and how is everyone else faring?
Well, the whole team's doing pretty good, Marshall. Whole hurricane, that's because we're into the high wall. Winds gusting 65, 75 miles an hour. You can see the trees swaying in the background. Some of these tin roofs here, this one's holding up pretty well, but things like gutters and whatnot are going to get ripped away with winds that strong. We go around, we're in the front, by the way, we're on the north side of the building, and with the winds coming out of the north now, Marshall, what's happening is we're being protected where I'm standing. That's why we're kind of panning off so we can show you just how strong those winds are once you get out into harm's way. There's a lot of debris flying around there, occasionally a tree limb and a tree coming on down. Boy, we get some big gusts in through here. We're talking about winds easily over 75 miles an hour. Now, power is out in many of the areas down and through here, and we think because the winds are the center is actually going to go just to our east. And interestingly enough, guys, there's a little place to our east called Opal Beach, which is where Hurricane Opal came over back in 1995. So over us, probably the west could get before it gets better. Let's find out what's happening in Destin. Here's Mike Bettis, just a little ways to my east. Mike, what's going on over there, bud?
Well, hey, Jim, I know what you're going through there. We're dealing with what looks to be a pretty nasty dose of Dennis right now. We've had wind gusts here in excess of 60 miles an hour in Destin. We'll give you kind of a lay of the land of where we are. Earlier, if you watched us this morning, we were down on the beaches here in Destin. Right now, we are at Destin Commons. It's a big tourist area, as you may well know, but this is a brand new, gorgeous mall/city that they've built in Destin. It is completely abandoned. A lot of the stores here are closed up, and we've seen signs ripped off of a lot of the storefronts here. And actually, I'm going to show you one thing. We've got a Spanish tile roof on top of one of the buildings up there, and unfortunately, with the high winds, this is what we're dealing with now. Some flying projectiles here with some of those tiles coming off the roofs right now, so something that we're certainly going to watch for. At this point, if you have not made it to your destination, or if you're in your home, you're in your shelter, great news. If you haven't made it to the shelter yet, you're out of luck. It is too late. This storm is coming on shore right now. You don't want to be outside, and this is going to be too dangerous for you for multiple reasons. Obviously, the winds are really going to pick up incredible intensity with the winds, especially in the eye wall. Also, keep in mind, down along some of, especially the beachfront areas, we're going to watch for a lot of flooding. We've had a lot of rain, but we're also watching for some storm surge and a lot of inland flooding in this area, considering that the area is very low in elevation. Destin is an area that floods very easily. When Hurricane Ivan came through last year, we actually had portions of 98, which parallels the beaches here, that was completely washed out. So, Marshall and Heather, a bad situation that's getting worse by the second. We're going to keep you updated here for the next several hours as Dennis moves on shore.
Thanks, Mike. That was Mike Bettis in Destin, Florida. Now, Hurricane Dennis is about ready to make it on shore. We're live from the Gulf Coast, commercial-free for the next hour to keep you abreast of how this is unfolding.
And we're going to take you now to Pensacola. This is where Jeff Morrow is standing by, or I should say trying to stand by. I see, Jeff, that you're really getting buffeted by those winds.
Yeah, Heather, it's gone downhill here pretty dramatically, I'd say, in the last half hour, 45 minutes. We're getting pretty consistent gusts here, at least in the 50-mile-an-hour range, if not a little bit higher. We're a little bit sheltered like Jim is. Here comes some pretty good gust. You can see the trees behind me and the wind and the rain whipping by here. As Jim was mentioning, the wind now starting to come around a little bit to the north, an indication that it does look like the center or the eye of this hurricane may pass by just to our east. Now, I want to take a little bit of a look down this way. You can see how it's completely deserted here. Pensacola is buttoned up and lashed down. Basically, everybody is out of town. Really haven't seen too many people out and about at all, so it does look like the evacuation notices have been heeded, of course, after last year's lesson with Ivan. Now, let's take a quick look down the road this way. Again, it's just a lot of wind and a lot of rain. It comes in gusts. It comes in big squalls. Of course, as that eye wall comes close to us, if we get in the western eye wall, then we're going to have more of a consistent, steady wind. And I would tend to believe a lot of these trees and tree limbs will probably start coming down. We'll keep you updated from here. Let's get back to you, Marshall and Heather.
That's Jeff Morrow. He's broadcasting from Pensacola, Florida, as Hurricane Dennis, a Category 3 hurricane, winds 120 miles per hour, approaches the coast. We're here for you commercial-free for the next hour as this formidable hurricane makes landfall.
And our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons, is standing by now. And as we are watching the system, Steve, approaching land, what are some of the biggest impacts and the biggest concerns? His mic isn't on. It sounds like we're having a little bit of problems there with Steve's microphone here, but you can see the intensity that we're working with, a Category 4, but this is going to do major damage through here.
Indeed, and it is about ready to make landfall. There is a tornado watch in effect as this landfall is imminent, just several miles now to the southeast of Pensacola Beach, Florida, and the impact of this will impact many. The eastern quadrant of this likely to bring the strongest winds to the coast. Now here's Dr. Steve Lyons for more.
Well, what we had a while ago was a very strong Category 4 hurricane out off the coast with very low pressure, and what we have now is a mid-range Category 3. What a difference the potential for damage is between the two. We don't want to minimize the impact from this, but this is a huge jump down the potential destruction scale from the wind itself. So we're monitoring this carefully, and with the system weakening, oftentimes we see a lot of those strongest winds lifting off the ground, getting only those strong winds and the heavy rain bands. Now here's the circulation moving onshore, and you can see quite a bit of a weakening trend right at the coastline, which is very, very fortunate. We couldn't be more happy about this, but still, the eye wall is coming onshore, and it's not over yet. We're going to get some very strong winds. So far, you've seen some live video on the western portions of the outer eye wall. The stronger winds are on the southeastern portion of the eye coming onshore, just to the southeast of Pensacola, down toward the Fort Walton Beach area, or just between that and Santa Rosa Beach area. That is going to continue onshore, and behind it the winds are very strong out of the south. So this is the time of strongest winds, but fortunately the winds are dying very quickly down from those devastating Category 4 winds we had offshore. So this is the potential area where we expect some structure damage along the coast, shrinking a little bit over toward the southeast within this, and there's a possibility of some minor structure damage in this yellow area as it moves inland over the next 12 to 24 hours. Now the wave action, we've seen very large waves along the beach. That's eroding the beach right now. Some structures along the coast will be damaged from that. And in conjunction with that, we have some very high surge. But even the surge potential is dropping as those winds drop. So it's very good news that the system is weakening as it moves onshore. But don't let your guard down inland either, because a large area of tropical storm strength winds is going to produce a very large swath of potential power outages over the next 12 hours or so through early tomorrow morning, and that'll extend well into the Montgomery, Alabama area and moving farther north with time. Back to you, Marshall and Heather.
Thanks, Dr. Lyons. Indeed, there are many inland hurricane warnings that are in effect as Hurricane Dennis makes it on shore. We'll keep you covered commercial-free, at least for the next hour, as the impact of Hurricane Dennis we can bring to you.
And one of the places we want to take you to right now is Mobile, Alabama, and that is where Mike Seidel is standing by. And Mike, certainly some areas probably getting hit worse than Mobile, and yet some relief to the folks here, but it's still not going to be an easy go of it, is it?
No, it isn't, but this is a pure example of the difference between being near the eye wall like Jeff Morrow or in the eye or east of it like Mike Bettis and around Gulf Breeze with Jim Cantori. We're so far west of the eye wall, our winds now are only gusting to around 45 miles an hour. A lot of people here in Mobile and certainly Baldwin County is very happy. We're still getting the rainfall, and you can see at times the trees will blow back and forth. It's raining at about a half an inch to an inch an hour, and we're expecting as much as 8 inches of rain, but we're also pleased the fact that it did stay well enough to our east that the wind is not going to be a major issue. We're still going to have some wind, certainly some damage, some minor damage, some trees down on power lines, and certainly power outages. But the other thing is the wind is blowing offshore. As Jeff Morrow mentioned, he's got a north or northwesterly wind. We've got a northerly wind. So that's taking the water in Mobile Bay and pushing it out, much like we saw with Hurricane Frederick in 1979. It's a very wet day. The curfew kicked in at 2 o'clock. They want everybody off the streets, and that's what everybody is doing. Just looking around, you can at times hear the wind howling through these cavernous streets. We've got some very tall buildings over here extending up some 20 or 25 stories. But as you can see, these pictures are nothing like you're seeing as you get close to that eye wall and over to the east, over towards Destin and Fort Walton Beach. So Marshall and Heather, a big sigh of relief here. We're not out of the woods. There will be flooding and there will be some power outages, much like a lot of the inland areas across Alabama, parts of Mississippi, and a large chunk of Georgia. But once again, like in Ivan, this area has escaped the worst and the brunt. The other thing saving us and also Pensacola in those areas, Escambia County, is the fact that it has weakened very, very nicely as it's made landfall.
Thanks, Mike. But as you mentioned, too, on the other side of the coin, you've got Pensacola, Florida. It's getting hit pretty good, and Jeff Morrow is there.
And, you know, I've been noticing here, too, that with Jeff, the wind's really blowing. And, Jeff, what people didn't see right there is it looked like you're really getting blown around there right before we came to you. What's the latest?
Whoa, we just had a wind gust here, I would say over hurricane force, almost blew me over down the road here. Let's look up at some of the power lines. Again, we're expecting some of those to come down. Fortunately, on the road where we are, most of the power lines underground, but down the street there, that's something we're going to have to watch. Power is still on. I can see a porch light there. If you look at the stop sign, you can see how it's getting blown all over the place. Again, just walls and sheets of water coming down the roadway here. Let's pan down this way just a little bit, and you can see some of the rain. It really kind of takes your breath away here because it's so strong, and the wind just fills the air with all this water. It's almost hard to breathe. It's almost like you're standing here and drowning. You got so much water in your face. It's backed off a little bit now, but that was probably the first 70 to 75 mile an hour wind gust, hurricane force that we saw. Again, I can see some more tree limbs down farther down the roadway here. Again, here comes some more wind and some more rain starting to blow through. Looking right to the north now. You're looking to the north, that northerly wind. It looks like we're getting a little bit into that western eye wall, and that's what's causing all these problems here. We'll keep you updated from here. Let's go to Mike Bettis. He's on the opposite side of this storm.
Jeff, I know you're having a hard time over there. We're on the eastern side of this storm. We're getting a really strong southeast wind right now. Hard to stand in it right now, but we're really starting to see our conditions deteriorate very quickly in the past half hour. It's come in waves, and we really haven't had the wind let up much in the past, say, maybe 20 minutes or so. Where we are here in Destin is a little bit off the beach. We're about a mile off the beach or so. We're in an area called Destin Common. If you see behind me, it's generally a small town that is more or less a mall. You can drive and walk through the town here. It really is an interesting place. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of debris flying down the streets here. There are a lot of buildings here that have signs that hang down their storefronts, and we're afraid a lot of those may rip off. But hey, if you look over here, one thing that's interesting is we've still got electricity here. Not sure how much longer we're going to have electricity, but interesting to see that some of the signs are still lit up here. Getting a little bit of a break now, which is actually nice to see, but we're definitely going to be watching for our conditions to go downhill as Ivan gets closer and closer on shore. Let's head a little back west into Pensacola now, Jeff.
All right, thanks, Mike. Again, here we're on the western side. Whoa, getting a lot of rain. Again, these sheets of rain continuing to blow right through downtown Pensacola. That's where I'm standing. Again, looking to the north. This is a northerly wind starting to blow in here now, an indication that the center of this hurricane is coming ashore just a little bit east of the Pensacola area. That may be good news as far as any flooding concerns. Unlike Ivan, which came in a little bit to our west, and hence we had all the flooding issues, this one looks like it may go a little bit farther east. I got to tell you, the rain is hurting. It's coming down so hard right now. It's like little hailstones that are bouncing off you. When it gusts up to about 50 or 60 miles an hour, it starts to get very, very difficult to stand. Looking up at some of the wind blowing through some of the trees here, again, more limbs starting to snap off. Here comes another big gust. We'll keep you updated from here. Woo! Getting a little bit hard to stand. Whoa! Getting a little bit hard to stand here. Let's get back to Marshall and Heather in the studio.
All right, Mike. All right, Jeff, just hang on there. And, you know, as we watch these winds continue above it, just in the past 5-10 minutes, you can see how much that they have continued to pick up.
And they will continue to pick it up, too. We have live coverage for you and commercial-free coverage of this landfall of a Category 3 hurricane, Hurricane Dennis. Also, want to let you know, 75-minute delays now at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport due to wind and approaching thunderstorms going to affect a lot of people. Now we want to turn it over to Dr. Greg Forbes, our severe weather expert.
And, Greg, I know you've been looking at the eye wall here as it approaches, and also some of the lightning strikes in the eye wall.
It is one impressive eye wall, Heather, and when I show you the radar here, you'll see why our people on the beach there are really getting blown around. Let's take a look. Sky Tracker 1 shows the eye wall approaching, and look, I've put on here all the lightning symbols, those little pink and blue symbols, and this eye has been filled with lightning as it's come into the shore. Eye itself is about 20 miles wide, this wall. I'll take off the lightning here so we can get a better look at it. And you can see it coming right into Pensacola there where some of our people are. Goes east to about Navarra, and then the strong winds on the east side of that hitting the Destin area. So this is giving hurricane winds and also even tornado-like winds, if you will, coming up across portions of Okaloosa, Escambia, and Santa Rosa counties. In fact, the National Weather Service has issued tornado warnings there for the possibility of tornadoes and tornado-like winds. Let me jump across here into Georgia, where we have tornado warnings as well. It's much more typical to get tornadoes in the outer eye walls of these storms, and in the areas between Macon and Atlanta, there are tornado warnings for Butts and Monroe County and Blount, Jackson, and Johnsonburg areas, and some severe thunderstorm warnings, damaging winds in Lamar and Spalding counties. So this eye wall, outer band here, I should say, is getting very active and working toward the Atlanta area, where we're going to probably get delays even longer than 75 minutes. Let's switch sources. We'll see that the heavy rain from this, if we can go to Weather Pro 3, heavy rain from this storm will continue inland as a problem for several days, 2 inches or more just between now and Tuesday morning. We'll work all the way up to Cape Girardeau to St. Louis, and then 4 inches or more in the dark green here will get Atlanta, Memphis, places like Meridian and Tuscaloosa, Mobile, and all of southern Alabama up into Birmingham. And any of these 4-inch amounts will likely cause a lot of flooding. And then look, some places will even get 12 inches where some of these bands stall out, and that will definitely cause some serious flooding. So flooding rains for several days, and up in the high river valley it may stall out. That's a problem. Tornadoes also a threat. Today, parts of south and in East Georgia, continuing tonight and then into tomorrow, all the way up to southern Illinois, parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. Fortunately, so far, the tornadoes have been a little bit on the spotty side. There's been a lot of cloud cover with this, not a whole lot of dry air worked its way in. The conditions that allow the hurricane to really develop, the lack of strong shear, the lack of any dry air in the environment, have thwarted the tornadoes so far. But tomorrow could be an especially active day, and it's still might get more active later on this evening. Heather? Marshall?
Looks like a rough another couple of days. Thank you, Dr. Forbes. We'll check in with you later. Now, your commercial-free coverage continues on the Hurricane Dennis, making landfall at this moment. Category 3, 120-mile-per-hour winds.
And again, we have our team coverage going here. We have Mike Seidel, who is following things in Mobile, Alabama, and also Mike Bettis in Destin, Florida, Jeff Morrow in Pensacola, Florida. We can show you here the areas here where these guys are getting hit now as this system is making landfall.
Just to the east of Gulf Breeze, which is being rocked with some very strong winds this morning. Destin, Fort Walton Beach, all of those areas to the east getting some very strong winds as well and heavy downpours, and you'll be able to see that evident with these live reports that we're going to take you to now.
And our team coverage does continue here. Again, we mentioned that we have our team members out here. We have Mike Bettis. We also have Mike Seidel and Jeff Morrow, who are out in the field here. And we're going to start this morning with, I believe, Mike Seidel, or I should say this afternoon.
Hello, Heather. Good afternoon. Back here.
Let's start with Jeff Morrow. He's in Pensacola, Florida.
Okay.
Jeff.
Okay, Marshall, that's okay. It's a hurricane after all. Yeah, if I keep glancing off to my left here, it's not because I'm not paying attention. I'm trying to watch to make sure that nothing is coming down the street at me. Sometimes it rains so hard. Here comes another big gust. I'm going to hold on to the lamppost here to make sure I can keep my balance. But again, sometimes it rains so hard like it is now that it's hard to even see anything coming in that wind, and that really is the big danger here. Again, as this hurricane comes on shore, folks, I know it may be kind of difficult for me to say, but you should stay off the streets. You should not be out here doing this or walking around. You should be inside. You should be in shelters. We're just showing you how bad it is out here at the present time, and we're doing our best to keep ourselves safe here. Again, Pensacola getting some of the western parts of this storm. It does appear that the eye itself, the eye is going to be moving by just to our east. And speaking of just off to the east, why don't we flip and go show you what the eastern side of this whole hurricane looks like with Mike Bettis. Woo! Uh-oh.
Yeah,
hold on.
Hey, Jeff, stay safe out there.
He's in Destin. Go, Mike.
Yeah, stay safe out there, Jeff. Sounds like you're really getting a hard hit. We're getting it in waves here in Destin as we're on now east side of the storm. When we get those breaks, we're very fortunate for them because it does take your breath away, listening to Jeff and knowing what he's going through. A tough time over there. Where we are is the eastern side, perfectly calm right now. That's how these hurricanes work. We're on the eastern side of the eye, and what we're looking at is more of a southeast-south breeze coming right out of the Gulf of Mexico. We're expecting hurricane force wind gusts here. We're generally on the outermost portion of that eye wall. So as you go incrementally out from the eye itself, those winds start to decrease. And so we're really hoping for the best here in Destin. Certainly down on the beaches is not the place to be. And really there's nobody in town. Our location is about a mile inland. We're in a common area. It's called Destin Commons. It is a mall area, and we're kind of shielded on almost four sides here. But unfortunately, we've seen a lot of debris flying through the air here, unfortunately. If you're not in your home, your shelter, your hotel, wherever you need to be, it's almost too late for you at this point. Nobody's out on the roadways. The only people that we've seen on the roadways are local law enforcement officers kind of patrolling to make sure everything is okay. But they as well, we talked to them earlier, they as well are going to be basically hunkering down in their headquarters and then just waiting for some calls to come in if they need to go out and help anybody out. But they'll probably wait as well until the hurricane passes, and then they'll go out and assess the damage. Curfew, by the way, Marshall and Heather, is in effect as of 6 o'clock, and it will not be lifted until further notice. And I want to let you know that people, they don't want them in the streets until law enforcement get out there and assess what's going on with this storm.
All right, thanks, Mike. We'll check in with you again in just a few minutes. I want to let everybody know, too, this is commercial-free, this hour of coverage, as Hurricane Dennis has made it on shore and continues to batter the Gulf Coast of Florida. Dr. Steve Lyons, our hurricane experts here.
And, Steve, as we see the system going on shore here now, where do we expect some of the strongest winds?
Well, of course, the eye wall, or the area right around the eye, is always the strongest wind. But within that section, where we expect it is typically where the thunderstorms are the strongest, where they're bringing the strong winds down. And that's particularly the case when the hurricane is weakening at the coastline. So right now we're seeing some gusts, some hurricane gusts down near Destin last hour, but some of the strongest winds are occurring in Pensacola, where you saw Jeff Morrow. And as we look at the radar here, look at the northwestern eye wall right there. See that big strong band of thunderstorms? That's where the strongest winds are occurring. They're bringing those strong winds aloft down to the surface. So So the eastern portions of Pensacola are getting hit pretty hard right now. There's some strong winds just offshore in the eye wall here, but they may not come down. The strongest winds may not come all the way down to the ground. Near Fort Walton Beach, expect some very strong winds as well. And as the system moves in, there's a very large fetch of strong tropical storm winds that's going to take the power out over a large portion of the western Florida Panhandle over the next 3 to 4 hours. And some of these strong bands moving toward Mobile will also cause the power outages the next few hours as well. There's one band, heavy band of rain moving out of the east toward Mobile and through Mobile in the next 20 to 30 minutes. Even some rain as far west, heavy rain on the order of 1 to 2 inches per hour. Local street flooding could be occurring in that band near Biloxi, but the stronger winds are well inside of Biloxi. You're in pretty good shape right now. Now, the wave action, on the other hand, is much bigger area. But let's look for a second at the rainfall potential. This is a very wet tropical cyclone, and moving north, we could expect some flooding in many of these locations over the next 12 hours, and that'll be spreading north into Birmingham, Alabama, and north, even portions of western Atlanta, Georgia, and the greater Georgia area could see some heavy rain the next 6 to 12 hours. Back to you, Heather and Marshall.
Well, we took the brunt of the landfall of Hurricane Dennis was in Gulf Breeze, Florida, and that's where Jim Cantore is stationed.
And he filed this report here just before we actually lost his signal.
It is 2 o'clock local time right now, ladies and gentlemen. We are dealing with what is going to be the outer eye wall of this thing coming through. Looks like 30 minutes, maybe an hour. And with the winds now shifting a little bit out of the north-northwest, it looks like the actual center will go to our east. Believe it or not, very close to where Opal came in back in 1995. They actually named a beach after it, called Opal Beach. Winds gusting 70, 75 miles an hour. We've seen some of the weaker trees, especially from Ivan, start to sway, and a couple have snapped as well. Roofs like this tin roof back in through here, starting to rip away just a little bit there. Right now, though, that roof seems to be holding pretty well. Winds are going to get stronger. Could see some gusts over 100 miles an hour. We'll keep you posted here from Gulf Breeze.
All right, that was Jim Cantore. Hurricane Dennis making it on shore as we speak. Commercial-free coverage here at the Weather Channel this hour as we cover that for you. Mike Seidel now?
Yeah, and Mike Seidel is at Mobile, and Mike is not getting hit quite as hard as some of the other guys out there in the field, but I know you certainly have problems there as well. Fill us in, Mike.
Yeah, we're going to have some flooding issues here with up to 8 inches of rain and also enough wind. We've had gusts up to 50 miles an hour, enough wind to bring down some trees, and we'll likely have at least some scattered power outages. Debris has been, oh, look at this. Debris has been very small compared to what they're going to see around the eye wall, around Pensacola Beach, over towards Destin. This is about it, but there's a lot of this down, so you're going to be out spending the next couple days raking your yards here in Mobile and Baldwin counties. The other issue is a lot of standing water. When you get rainfall rates at 1 to 2 inches an hour, the drainage systems just can't handle it. And we've seen roadways across Baldwin County underwater, and you can get an idea right here of the water as I kick through it. And it's about 4, 5, 6 inches deep. So roadways underwater with the rain, that will back off as the rain backs off later on this evening. But as you can see, the trees above me, they're not being blown nearly by the force of the wind that they're seeing, that Jeff Morrow is seeing, Jim Cantore and Mike Bettis are seeing off to the east. Another just vivid illustration around here of how advantageous it is to be on the eastern, or rather the western side of the eye wall. We're about 50 miles from Pensacola, and what a difference that makes. Not only are we far enough away from the eye wall, but we're getting winds blowing offshore, and that is pushing the water in Mobile Bay away from downtown Mobile, just like we saw with Ivan and just like we saw with Frederick. So again, right now, not too bad, not nearly as bad as we're taking it over in the Florida Panhandle and down towards, say, Baldwin County, the next county over in Alabama, around Bay Minette, down towards Gulf Shores and Orange Beach. We're looking okay. Power's on here. Winds have gusted, I said, 45 to 50 miles an hour. The issue will be heavy rain, localized flooding, and power outages. But at this point, that is it. We'll see how things shake out, and Marshall and Heather will keep you updated right on through this evening as Ivan moves inland from the landfall, pulls away, and the rain ends. Tomorrow's still breezy, but only scattered showers and thunderstorms.
All right, thank you, Mike, and hopefully you'll keep all that power there, too, in Mobile.
Oh, indeed. There will be power outages galore there. I want to let you know, too, if you're watching, because you have a generator, make sure that that is outside and in the open, because there'll be problems with carbon monoxide. One of the reasons for emergency rooms use in the wake of one of these. Now, to recap, this hurricane has made it onshore at about 2:15 Central Daylight Time between Oriole Beach and Navarre, and roughly between Fort Walton and Pensacola Beach. Strong winds and heavy rain. That's why flash flood watches are issued and have been in effect now for some time.
Yeah, a lot of concerns with rain with this system because, of course, it's not just the coastal areas that get hit when you have a hurricane. You get all that rain pressing in. And you can see that we've had significant rainfall in some of these areas already, like Memphis and Jackson, Montgomery. Look at Montgomery, and also the Atlanta area. And then you add to that all of this rain that's going to be pressing into these areas, and things could certainly go downhill very quickly in terms of flooding.
Well, by the way, you folks that are headed to the airport at Atlanta's Hartsfield International Airport, heavy rain, thunderstorms, and wind now causing delays up to 75 minutes. Now we're going to take you back to Florida, Destin, Florida.
Yeah, and that's where Mike Bettis is standing by. And Mike, how are things shaping up? I know it's been fairly rough there.
It has been fairly rough. We're starting to get those winds come in spurts. So right now, we're actually looking pretty good. I mean, we're getting the winds maybe 10 to 15 miles per hour. Then all of a sudden, here comes a 60-mile or 70-mile-an-hour wind gust. When we get those gusts that come through, we get some damage. Look on the ground here. You can see we've got some tile roofing that's spit off some of the, whoa, that's come off. There's one of those gusts that come off some of the buildings. If you look up behind me here, we've got these Spanish tile roofs, and those are susceptible, those tiles coming off with those high wind gusts that come through. Also with the wind gusts in some of the storefronts in the shopping area where we are, you can see the sign behind me here has been blown out. And so the winds are doing some damage here. We've seen some debris that's been flying through the streets. So the last thing you want to do is be out here in the elements. We come out here to show you the elements, to show you what it's like so that you don't have to be out in this. You need to be in your home, you need to be in your shelter or in the hotel and staying safe. I want to let you know, Heather and Marcia, this is very important. Okaloosa and Walton counties both under mandatory curfews right now, and so that curfew will not be lifted until further notice. We've got to get out there, the officials get out there, and they kind of survey the damage once the hurricane has passed, and then they let people know when it's safe to return to their homes. So very important. But again, we get the winds that come and go in gusts. We're going to keep you updated here through the next hour or until our shot can't be put up anymore with the strong winds that are coming through.
All right, thank you, Mike. And, you know, one thing we want to talk about, too, is where this is going to be headed inland, because there are going to be a lot of serious inland impacts from this system. We've been showing a lot of the coastal conditions here, but look at how this is going to continue on its path here, working in across Alabama and also Mississippi, eventually coming into the Tennessee Valley. And with that, you're going to find that we're going to notice some big problems here with concerns with flooding and also some very heavy rain.
Also, report just in, we had a peak wind gust at Valparaiso, Florida of 83 miles per hour. Also have another report near Apalachicola, Florida. The water is pushed across Route 98, which is a major artery across Panhandle, Florida, close to the coast, that arrived in 1985 with Kate and Elena. Now, the other inland threat is going to be some severe weather. And
let's talk to Dr. Steve Forbes about that, and let's talk about all of this. We've got rain here, tornado, and strong winds. Fill us in on what we can expect.
Yeah, we really have a triple threat there, Heather, and an imminent threat is hurricane-force winds coming across Eglin Air Force Base up toward Milton and then north-northwest bound. Let's take a look here. Sky Tracker shows that eye wall has come inland. The eye is inland now, and this swath between my white lines coming up across Eglin Air Force Base, coming up to Milton, then toward Atmore and heading on up toward Meridian, Mississippi. Those will get the strongest of the wind gusts. There are power line type outage type winds even farther than that. You won't see this very often. This eye wall has had lightning with it. That is not at all common, and we have had accordingly tornado warnings posted for Santa Rosa, Escambia, and Okaloosa counties there. Give you the broad picture of Dennis, and the outer bands are continuing now all across southern portions of Georgia. They have lightning in them as well, and I'll zoom into a little bit farther east in Georgia. These bands are beginning to work their way toward the Atlanta area, and in the area between Macon and Atlanta, we have tornado warnings in Butts and Monroe County around the Jackson area, and severe thunderstorm damaging wind possibilities, Jasper, Putnam, Butts, and Henry counties. Let's switch sources. We'll see where all of this is heading over the next couple of days. And look at all this rainfall, 2 inches or more, all the way up to Cape Girardeau, and that's just through Tuesday morning. This will continue stall out in the Ohio Valley. Beyond that, dark green here, 4 inches or more. That could include Atlanta, Memphis, Meridian, Mississippi, Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, Montgomery, and all of the Florida Panhandle. This amount here, this 12-inch amount, that's what's really the problem, because some areas are going to get a lot more than 4 inches. Some very severe flooding will result. Now, there's a tornado threat as well. It fortunately has not been a real large one thus far. In this afternoon through evening, the light blue shaded areas overnight tonight, continuing toward Birmingham, Alabama, Tupelo, Mississippi, and then tomorrow. Could be some sun come out tomorrow behind this. Let it get a little more unstable. I'm concerned about tomorrow. Anywhere from western Kentucky, parts of Tennessee, maybe Nashville, perhaps still Atlanta, Columbus, Georgia, down into the Florida Panhandle. So a triple threat with damaging winds continuing well inland, the flooding continuing well inland for days, and then tornado threat at least today and tomorrow. Heather and Marshall.
A lot of good information. Thank you so much, Greg Forbes. And I apologize about calling you Steve Riley. It's been a crazy afternoon here at the Weather Channel.
Yeah, well, you combine the two experts and you get Steve Forbes. They're both doing an excellent job this morning. Commercial free this hour, watching the landfall of Hurricane Dennis, Category 3 as it made landfall.
Well, we have some powerful waves that are crashing onto Panama City, Florida at this hour.
WJXT's Adam Landau reports.
We've been getting pelted by heavy rains and strong winds for the last couple of hours. You can take a look down the road and you can see that's a pretty rare sight. A car.
It is 2 o'clock local time right now, ladies and gentlemen. We are dealing with...
It looks like we're having some problems here. Of course, a lot of trouble with some of our signals here because of some of the heavy rainfall and the winds that we're seeing in these areas.
A lot of digital fade, that's for sure. Now, we do have the report that we were trying to show you just a moment ago from Jacksonville with Adam Landau.
We've been getting pelted by heavy rains and strong winds for the last couple of hours. You can take a look down the road and you can see that's a pretty rare sight, a car driving down it, unless it's a police car. They're still patrolling the area, making sure no one gets anywhere near the beach. Right now, debris is flying through the air. The big worry is power lines and just what it will take to knock them down. A lot of people here lost power during Ivan for weeks at a time, and they're worried that it might happen again. Now, take a look over there, and you can see where Dennis is really doing damage, and that's to the beaches, because look at that storm surge. Boy, the ocean is really angry. Combine that with the whipping winds, and there is concern that we may see flooding on these streets here closest to the beach. Again, they're thinking they're out of the woods here, but it's going to take well into tonight to know for sure. In Panama City Beach, I'm Adam Landau for the Weather Channel.
Obviously, that report from Panama City Beach, not Jacksonville, Florida. We're going to take you to another report in Florida now.
Well, and you know, if you saw Jeff Morrow earlier, he was really getting hit by some of those very strong winds, so it's no surprise here that we did lose his signal, but he did file this report right before we lost it.
Yeah, if I keep glancing off to my left here, it's not because I'm not paying attention. I'm trying to watch to make sure that nothing is coming down the street at me. Sometimes it rains so hard. Here comes another big gust. I'm going to hold on to the lamppost here to make sure I can keep my balance. But again, sometimes it rains so hard like it is now that it's hard to even see anything coming in that wind, and that really is the big danger here. Again, as this hurricane comes on shore, folks, I know it may be kind of difficult for me to say, but you should stay off the streets. You should not be out here doing this or walking around. You should be inside. You should be in shelters. We're just showing you how bad it is out here at the present time, and we're doing our best to keep ourselves safe here.
We're going to shortly take you west of where we just found that report filed by Jeff Morrow as Hurricane Dennis continues to move onshore. And this is commercial-free coverage from the Weather Channel for you.
Well, and where we're going to take you now is Mobile, and that's where Mike Seidel is standing by live. Not getting hit quite as hard as some of the other areas, Mike, but what kind of concerns do you have in this region?
Well, we have the flooding issue, and we still have gusty winds. They're going to knock down some trees and knock down some power. Our peak gust so far is 47 miles an hour, so a far cry from what they're seeing. And one of the advantages of being in a situation like that where we are is that we can still broadcast live. Jeff and Jim, between the rain fade and the wind, they may have had to put their dishes down, I don't know, but you just can't broadcast in weather when it gets that serious. But so far, so good. Hang in there. We're going to walk down Church Street here and take a look. Now, we're getting a pretty good squall right now. These gusts are up around 35 or 40 miles an hour. And take a look at the street here. Now, we've got a lot of standing water here in the street, and this is what we've got all over Mobile. In fact, we found some roads earlier that were already underwater. Now, granted, it's not that deep. It's 3 or 4 inches deep, and fortunately, tropical water. It's not that cold, but you get a sense of a lot of standing water. This is going to be a problem, too, as far as the next 4 or 5 hours. We're expecting upwards of 8 inches of rain. Now, look over here. Now we're getting a pretty good squall. The wind coming down. We're getting what we term the Bernoulli effect. The air is getting squeezed between these two huge buildings, between the Radisson and the government office building. Look at the wave of rain coming in here. This is about as bad as we've seen it. But also notice over at the government office buildings, they've sandbagged. A lot of sandbags. Whoa, that's a good one. A lot of sandbags here. So they're ready for this. But fortunately, because the center of Dennis has pushed inland far enough to the west, we're on the good side, the more favorable side. We're still going to get, again, some flooding, rains, maybe some severe weather, and also the issue of power lines. The power downtown is still on here at our hotel. The Radisson is on. Let's take another look this way into the squall. I know it's going to get kind of wet on the lens, get a sense of the wind. Now, these winds are coming in from the north, and again, we've been emphasizing the fact that this northerly wind acts to push the water in Mobile Bay down the bay. Now, there may be a little bit of a surge on the south and west side of the bay in Mobile County, but it's not going to be continuous. Looking down the street, deserted today, visibility now about a half a mile. We're looking out towards Mobile Bay, and there's a few limbs down, but nothing like they're seeing over around Pensacola and Gulf Breeze. Just a real nasty day. This is more like a tropical storm here in Mobile than a full-fledged hurricane that they're getting 50, 60 miles just to our east. So once again, much like in Ivan last year, we have dodged the worst of it. Let's walk back here. And again, just scan the street. There's some limbs down, and the wind is blowing. We've got the rain, but so far so good here in Mobile. Marshall and Heather, back to you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Now we're going to go to an area that didn't dodge the bullet, Destin, Florida.
And that's where Mike Bettis is standing by live. And Mike, I see that the winds are blowing you around. What's it like right now?
Yeah, another big gust of wind has come through at this time. I gotta tell you, it's one of those deals where you really gotta lean into it to keep from falling over. The great news is about the past, say, 20 minutes or so that the rain has let up, so it's actually perfectly dry out right now. We're dry. I could take my waterproof jacket off now if I wanted to and not worry about it all, but the winds are still very strong here in the Destin area. They come through with the mighty force, and we've seen a lot of debris that's been flying through the air. We have a couple of pieces of debris that have been flying off some of the trees here and some of the buildings. You get pieces of roof, you get pieces of metal that you really have no idea where they come from, and so there are many locations here that we're going to kind of keep our eye on and make sure we don't get hit with anything because those winds really come through, and when they do, whoa, watch out, Dave, some stuff behind there. Come on forward. We're watching a lot of areas where we're watching for pieces of roof. I just kind of mentioned to our photographer there, pieces of debris flew right behind him there. But we're definitely keeping our eye out for that. We are expecting our winds to die shortly. We're on the extreme eastern side of this storm, the extreme outer eye wall here in Destin. So we're not getting as strong winds, we don't believe, is what they're seeing over in Gulf Breeze or over in Pensacola. And we're actually fairly thankful for that. But again, the good news is that we don't have much rain affecting us right now. So maybe flooding at this point may be held to a minimum, Marshall and Heather.
All right, thanks, Mike. I want to give you a recap on Hurricane Dennis at this hour. It made it on shore at 2:25 p.m. Central Daylight Time.
And as it was coming on shore here, it winds of 115 to 120 miles per hour. That is a Cat 3 storm working in here. You can see this massive hurricane working in the effects far north. You can see Atlanta picking up some of this rain, Birmingham, Montgomery, even Savannah picking up some rain from this system. So this is going to be affecting a lot of people beyond the coastal regions.
And officially, it was a Category 3 hurricane as it moved across Santa Rosa Island, the official point of the circulation making landfall.
And we want to tell you, too, where our team coverage is this morning. Again, we are having reports from Mobile, Alabama, and we are looking here to Mike Seidel, who's been covering that. Also, Jim Cantori, Gulf Breeze, Mike Seidel, as I mentioned, and Mike Bettis in Destin, Florida. Jeff Morrow, he has been in Pensacola.
And we're going to have some more live reports from them in a moment in this commercial-free coverage for you. But first, we're going to take it over to our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons.
And Steve, why don't you talk about the surge and the impacts of this?
Okay, the surge is actually very widespread. It turns out the circulation you can see moving in here in the western Florida panhandle near Pensacola. And the winds are onshore here at about 45 miles per hour just south of Destin. Offshore at about 51 miles per hour at the over here in Alabama, and that's going to cause some back bay flooding associated with those winds. But look over here, way down in the corner over here near Apalachicola, winds have been 40 to 50 miles per hour onshore there for a few hours, gusting to 60. Now, when we talk about the surge along the coastline, we have to look not only at, here's the circulation center right here, moving onshore up here, but it's the bathymetry offshore that controls how high the surge gets. And when you look over here near Apalachicola, look at how shallow it is out here. And so that onshore flow is causing the water to rise rather dramatically there. In Franklin County, we've actually seen a surge there now of about 10 feet. 10 feet there, so that's the highest surge we've seen anywhere, and that's right over in this area in our 5 to 10 foot range, expecting somewhere in between here. We haven't had any reports, 10 to 15 feet with our Category 3 hurricane in the greater Pensacola area and just to the east of that area. In the meantime, this area is very surge prone, so well away from the hurricane landfall, more than 150 miles away, we're having a 10-foot surge. Watch out for the coastal flooding there. Now, in the meantime, we've got some other problems as well to think about. The wave action is causing significant beach erosion along the Florida Panhandle, particularly in the western portions where the wave action is very large. Over here where we've got the surge, the wave action is not an issue. So significant beach erosion here the next 6 hours. Back to you, Heather and Marshall.
All right, thanks, Dr. Lyons. We'll be talking with you soon, too. Want to show you the impact of these inland winds. That area is shaded in the red. Those are hurricane force winds in excess of 74 miles per hour. The outer periphery in the yellow, that's tropical storm force winds, and they will expand northward. Notice how far north those hurricane force winds go. Look out in southwestern Alabama, also in extreme eastern Mississippi. You're going to feel sustained winds in the tropical storm force variety over the next 18 to 24 hours. Dr. Greg Forbes joins us now, our severe weather expert.
And Greg, you know, as we look at some of these areas where we're going to see damage, where is that damage imminent? And also, what about some of the inland areas that will see some of this following?
Yeah, we're going to have those hurricane force type winds, structural damage, as we've just been talking about, heading north-northwest from where the eye has made landfall. Let's take a look. Here is that eye. And it's an impressive one as it's come onshore there. It's especially this eastern half of the eye that'll have the strongest winds. Perhaps some gusty winds, strong winds elsewhere. And that, as we indicate, is coming up the western side of Eglin Air Force Base toward Milton, Pace, Allentown, the east side of Pensacola, Atmore, Florida, and then up into Jackson, Alabama, Meridian, Mississippi. And there still is some lightning. I've turned the lightning off, but still some lightning in there as well. Farther to the east, we have winds that could knock down trees and power lines, certainly cause outages quite a ways off to the east, as we have a very, very impressive picture here. Look at all of this area of yellow and orange, those rain bands spreading now all the way from Pensacola, Florida to Atlanta. And I'm going to zoom in closer to the Atlanta area where the northeastmost of those rain bands has some pretty strong winds in it. Look, I've shaded in the yellow here, the counties, damaging winds there, working their way toward the Atlanta area, and that is Jasper and Putnam counties, Butts and Henry counties, working their way slowly toward the Atlanta area. Let's switch sources. Over the next couple of days to Weather Pro 3, we'll see the flood threat certainly not even going to stop with the Memphis area. It's going to continue up into the St. Louis area, 2 inches in the light green, 4 inches or more, coming up toward Memphis, toward Paducah, places like Meridian and Tupelo. And a tornado threat across Georgia, Alabama, perhaps tomorrow up into Tennessee as well. Heather and Marshall.
All right, thanks, Dr. Forbes. I want to take you now back to Panama City Beach, where we have some new video just in as we look at the force of this hurricane as it made it onshore earlier. This is new video. Those waves look like they're 10 to 15 feet tall. The surge and the water rise enormous in that region. We have live reports all along the Gulf Coast as your commercial-free coverage of the landfall of Hurricane Dennis continues here at the Weather Channel. And continuing with that, we're going to move to Mike Seidel, I believe.
That's right. He's in Mobile, Alabama. And Mike, just checking some of the wind gusts in the area, around 48 miles per hour. What's it like where you're standing?
Yeah, we've seen that. Fortunately, we're protected. We're very protected. We've got very tall buildings, so the wind swirls a little bit at times down some of these streets. But for the most part, we're not getting very strong winds right now, at least with these squalls. Now, take a look down the street right now. We're going to kind of zoom in down about 2 blocks, and you can see some debris down the street. And this basically is about all we've seen. Nothing big, no big limbs at this point. But once again, we didn't expect the worst of it here. We're far enough away. We're about 50 or 60 miles away from the eye wall, and we're also inland. We're up in Mobile Bay, and again, enough of a distance away from the coast that we're not going to get the strong winds. They are beginning to weaken because of the friction. We'll walk over here. This is about the worst of it right here, this limb, and this is really no big deal compared to what they're going to see off to our east, Pensacola Beach, Destin, Fort Walton Beach, and even inland, beyond I-10. You get up into parts of Alabama, even across the Florida line, you're going to have debris everywhere and probably more power outages there than here because you're closer to what's going to be the remains of the hurricane. Right now, it's more like a tropical storm. Once again, we'll take a walk down the street here and show you the flooding. And once again, this is no big deal. This is what you have when you get rainfall rates of 1 to 2 inches an hour, a lot of standing water on these streets. And once the rainfall backs off later on this evening, we will certainly see these waters back on off. Now, as you noticed, if you've been watching over the past hour, that right now we're in between those squalls. Just a few minutes ago, one was blowing rain and very strong winds were being channeled between the city government building here in Mobile and the Radisson Hotel, which goes up about a dozen floors. But right now, a break, as Mike Bettis mentioned, this is what happens. It comes in waves when you get far enough away. Now, he's far enough away from the eye wall on the east side. We're on the west side. This is the good side to be on. And Mobile and Baldwin counties, for the most part, have dodged another serious hurricane. Last year it was Ivan. This year was Dennis. And again, right now, nothing worse than a tropical storm. Worse than Cindy was, certainly, but certainly not as bad as it could have been as it jogged northwest then north before it had a chance to get this far off to the west. Marshall and Heather, that's how it looks here in Mobile. So far, the power is still on, and we're looking pretty good tonight. But again, we still have more rain bands to get on through.
And Mike, I know the people that live in Mobile love to hear those words when you say not as bad as it could have been. Thank you.
But it is bad elsewhere, Mike, and that's where Jim Cantori is, where he's greeting us by telephone right now as he was very near the eye of the storm.
Yeah, lost his signal. And Jim, fill us in on what it's like right now.
Well, guys, it's been kind of a wild ride here for the last 35, 40 minutes. So we started off in the northwestern part of the eye wall. We went through the western part of the eye wall and now southwestern part of the eye wall. Winds are just gradually starting to let up a little bit. Still gusting to hurricane force. Some tree limbs, some power lines down. We were watching the roof that's across the hospital from us. It was flapping up and down. That's why they tell you to tie those roofs down. That's what's code, and that's what's saving a lot of those roofs. It's kind of amazing. We see this huge roof that's about 50 yards long, just kind of flapping up and down and not coming off completely. Amazing indeed. You know, the last minute, again, this thing jogged to our east. It went over, we think, very near Navarre Beach or Opal Beach, named after Hurricane Opal in 1995, which came ashore. So a very similar track, actually, that Opal came ashore. We're on the western side of it, and definitely the better side of it, as was Mike. But being even in the western eye wall here, no question, a lot of damage. Power's out all over the county and through here, and hopefully, you know, these winds will die down sometime tomorrow, and they can start making some repairs. Guys?
All right, Jim, and again, coming on shore here right near you to Santa Rosa Island between Pensacola Beach and also Navarre Beach.
Yeah, Dr. Forbes was watching, it looks like, right between Oriole Beach and Navarre, where some major impact was felt. We're going to go to Mike Bettis now, who is in Destin, Florida. Mike, how's it looking to you?
I got to tell you, Heather and Marshall, actually looking pretty good here since we last talked to you. Winds have let up just a little bit. The sky has actually gotten quite bright. I'm wondering now if at some point here we might actually see the sunshine. But at times we do get some very strong winds that come through. Our location here, you can see that there is some damage to some of the storefronts here where they have some boarded up windows here and some canopies that have kind of been torn off. We've also got some other buildings here that have been boarded up, and some of those boards have actually flown off there as well. Haven't had any rain here in the past at least half an hour, so hopefully we might be done with the rain. We'll reduce the threat for some flooding, so that's good. But gradually, as we go through the next couple hours, expecting those winds to die down, then we'll get out there and assess what's going on as far as damage. From our current location, we can't move around a whole lot, but we can scan a couple of 100 yards or so. We haven't seen a whole lot of damage. That's been really good news. A little bit of damage to some roofs, some storefronts damaged just a little bit, but you know the recovery process does take a little bit of time. So we're going to send it back to to you in the Weather Channel studios. Do want to let you know that Okaloosa and Walton counties, we are under a curfew right now until further notice.
Okay.
All right, Mike, thanks for that report. We also had a report about an hour ago from Jeff Morrow.
Yeah, about a half hour ago, actually, and he was in the Pensacola area here. And the problem is when you're this close to where this hurricane is making landfall, you tend to lose the signal. And that's exactly what happened to Jeff, but he did file this report first.
Yeah, if I keep glancing off to my left here, it's not because I'm not paying attention. I'm trying to watch to make sure that nothing is coming down the street at me. Sometimes it rains so hard. Here comes another big gust. I'm going to hold on to the lamppost here to make sure I can keep my balance. But again, sometimes it rains so hard like it is now that it's hard to even see anything coming in that wind, and that really is the big danger here. Again, as this hurricane comes on shore, folks, I know it may be kind of difficult for me to say, but you should stay off the streets. You should not be out here doing this or walking around. You should be inside. You should be in shelters. We're just showing you how bad it is out here at the present time, and we're doing our best to keep ourselves safe here.
That was Jeff Morrow. As you can see, his signal breaking up. Now, Paul Goodloe and Jennifer Lopez are going to be up next. They're going to keep you covered as Hurricane Dennis continues to make its presence felt along the Gulf Coast.
And in the meantime, I know a lot of you want to get a chance to see your local forecast, so we'll take a quick break to look at your local forecast.
We'll go out on this satellite picture of Hurricane Dennis, a Category 3 hurricane as it made landfall over Santa Rosa Island. Be safe. Stay with us for continuing coverage of this landfall.